Remarkable people overcoming remarkable challenges with resilience, dedication, community, and grit. Listen as they share their stories of overcoming adversity. Open your eyes to what is genuinely possible for all of us. Authentic Adversity with host Chris Howe.
Welcome back for another episode of the Authentic Adversity podcast. Today, I'm sitting down with a former Marine, MMA fighter, a junior Olympic boxer. He currently works as a carpenter. And I mean, this guy has done too many podcasts to even mention in the last year and a half or two. It's really quite amazing. His stuff is all over the internet. His story is absolutely, phenomenal, inspiring. And, I really want to thank Tim Lodgen for coming on today.
Hey, Chris, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on and share my story with your audience. And I hope, my goal is just to connect with one person. And, if I connect with one person today, I know that I've done something good, with my message. So that's all I want is one person to hear my message today.
For sure. I really appreciate that. That's the thing. Like, social media can be used for, there's so many people using social media for negative things, but I mean, to get a message out there, tell your story, use platforms like this to give some inspiration and hope to other people who might still be out there sick and suffering. I mean, I think that's our duty as people in recovery.
Oh, 100%. I agree with that. And for so long I was so lost and I didn't know my purpose. I was like, why the hell am I here? Like,
Yeah.
what am I supposed to be doing?
Right.
And then it was once I got sober and started living recovery and reading and really working on myself.
Yeah.
It finally dawned on me, holy shit, I went through all of that hell so I could just share my story so people didn't feel alone. They didn't feel as if, they were the only person going through that pain.
Yeah.
How could anybody possibly know what I'm going through? This is all me.
Yeah.
When there's so many of us out there going through the same stuff. And the more that we share, the more people we can help, the less people we lose to this disease.
Yeah, I totally agree. And isn't it kind of, it's really interesting that we all have that terminal uniqueness, like they talk about in the rooms, right? Where we think like nobody else understands and, they haven't gone through this or they're not me. This is my story. And sure, everybody owns their story. And I believe that the details for everyone's story are completely different, but the emotions that we go through are all the same. And we can all relate to one another as people who have been sick and suffering and today have pushed through that and live a healthy life in recovery. And I really think that these messages will do just that, give that little piece of hope for somebody who's still out there.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like you said, everybody's story is different. We all have different stories. We've all lived different life. Our circumstances are all different,
Right?
But the end result has all been the same.
That's right.
We're all in the same boat together at the end, and we can all help each other and listen and learn with each other and help each other grow.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful thing in recovery. I got to tell you, not too many people wanted to deal with me in my addiction.
Yeah.
I can't imagine why, but it's so cool to have so many people with like-minded goals and aspirations.
Right.
And we all help each other, and we all got each other's back, and it's just an amazing community.
It is. And that community is so important, to have that fellowship with people who have gone through it and been there that can kind of pass down those tidbits of useful information and, actionable steps that we need to take to get to where we need to be in life.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So let's get into your story, Tim. I want to first know, what was it like for you growing up? Where did you grow up? What was the environment like? And sort of, what was Tim like as a kid?
Sure. Well, you have listened to my podcast, but I'm going to go through it for your audience.
Do it. Yeah.
I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland. I've lived here my whole life. The only time I did not live here was when I was in the Marine Corps and I was stationed in North Carolina. But my father was a police officer.
Mm-hmm.
My mother actually was a professional bodybuilder when I grew up as a child. So that was kind of a little different in the 80s. Women bodybuilders were kind of odd.
Yeah.
So, but there was no drugs and alcohol in my house. There wasn't There wasn't liquor in the cabinet. There wasn't beer in the refrigerator.
Mm-hmm.
I've maybe seen my mom drink 5 beers in her entire life, and she's 73.
Wow.
So, yeah, and she wouldn't even finish them. She'd just sip it at like eating crabs or at a function and then just forget about it. My
Jeez.
dad would drink like a normal individual
Mm-hmm.
at a holiday party or a cookout or something, but I never saw my father drunk either. So
Okay.
it was, I wasn't surrounded by that.
Right. Right.
My father did leave my mother when I was in first grade, so I think I was 6 or 7.
Okay.
And I will tell you that affected me greatly. I
Mm-hmm.
have a brother who's almost 11 years older than me, so I'm going into first grade, and my brother's going to be a senior in high school.
Right.
And for me, as a 6-year-old boy, I thought it was my fault.
Right.
What did I do to make my father leave? Did I not
Jeez.
listen? Did I not clean up the room? Did I not be, was I not a good boy? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I held on to that for a very long time. And when they split up, he would call and say, "Hey, I'm coming to get you. Pack your bags."
Right.
I cannot tell you how many times I sat at the front door with my bags packed and my father didn't show up to pick me up.
Oh, yeah.
it,
Jeez.
it got to a point where he would call my mom and say, "Hey, have Timmy pack his bag. He's going to spend the weekend with me." I wouldn't even pack. And my mom would be like, "Why aren't you packing?" I'm like, "He's not coming. I'm not going to sit in front of the front door anymore and waiting for him not to come or to call at last minute. Oh, something came
Wow.
up. I can't get you, buddy." So
Yeah.
that further made me really feel like my dad wanted nothing to do with me. Like, what the hell is wrong with me?
Right.
Why did he stick around so long with my brother, but he left me when I was in first grade. So later in life, as I got into my addiction, I used that sometimes to drink and drugs. I really did.
Okay.
I would tell myself, well, my own father didn't love me, so who cares? I'll just get drunk or I'll just get high. You know,
Right.
if my own parent didn't love me, then why should I love myself?
Yeah, it's really
But
unfortunate. Your sense of self-worth at that young of an age is so affected by this, and yeah, and carries through the rest of your life like that, or at least in addiction like that, right?
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah,
And when you're active in addiction, we look for every justification reason to use,
sure.
and it doesn't take much. It
Yeah.
really doesn't.
Yes.
But when my dad left, my mom really kept me busy. She got me into sports. I played little league baseball for 8 years,
Okay.
and I was a star. I was the all-star pitcher on the team. And the reason I mention that is because I go through my story. I played football. I was the all-star running back on the football team. I
Mhm.
got into boxing in sixth grade, and by eighth grade, I was fighting in the Junior Olympics and Golden Glove championships. I came in
Right.
third place in Junior Olympics.
Wow.
Also in middle school, I started skateboarding, and within 2 years, I was sponsored by a bunch of local skate shops down here. And
Okay. Cool.
I grew up. I grew up with Brandon Novak from Jackass and Viva La Bam.
Mm-hmm.
He actually lived like 3 streets over from me, and we would skateboard together all the time. And he was friends with Bucky Lassick, and I would be able to skate with Bucky every once in a while when he was in town.
Wow.
So I
How
grew
cool.
up. I grew up. I grew up with some really big heavy hitters in the skateboard world.
Yeah.
And once I got into high school, um, I still didn't drink and drug. I was all focused on sports. But
Mm-hmm.
ninth grade, we had a welcome to high school freshman party,
Okay.
and my buddy was hosting it, and I went. That's the very first time I ever tried alcohol, and we had a bunch of seniors get us beer, and it was Pabst Blue Ribbon and Colt 45 malt liquor.
Okay.
And I got so sick, man. It was bad. The next morning, my mom picked me up and she looks at me and she's like, "You drank last night, didn't you?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Well, I'm not going to punish you. Your whole rest of your weekend's ruined. That's going to be your punishment.
Okay.
And we're having a cookout today, and I need 50 ears of corn shucked." She's like, "So what you're going to do is you're going to go in the basement and shuck all 50 ears of this corn. Here's a bag for you to put the corn in, and here's a bag for you to throw up." And
Oh
that was
no.
my punishment. I had to sit in the basement and shuck these ears of corn while I was thrown up in the
Oh
paper
my
bag.
goodness. Yeah.
But that deterred me from ever drinking again.
It worked,
So
right?
all through yeah, it did.
Yeah.
No drugs, no alcohol, nothing. And then I got to senior year of high school. Now, the summer before senior year, I was like, man, I don't have grades getting to college.
Hmm.
And my friends were all starting to get in trouble with the law and starting to do drugs. And I was like, I really don't want to do that.
Right.
So I signed up for the Marine Corps. So when I got into senior year of high school, I knew once I graduated high school, the month after I graduated, I'm going into boot camp. So I was like, let me have some fun this year. Let me go to some parties. Let me just get it out of my system,
Yeah.
because at the end of the season, when I go in the Marine Corps, shit's going to hit the fan and it's going to get real. So let me
Right.
have some fun. So I started going to parties. And for me, it wasn't to fit in, it wasn't to be popular. I was a very popular kid in high school. I had a lot of friends.
Hmm.
It was just, I was in that mindset of let me get it out of my system.
Right.
So I started going to parties and I started drinking. Well, I found out that once I started drinking, my barriers went down and I started looking at the party. What else is here?
Hmm.
I might as
Hmm.
well try it, because at the end of the year, I'm not going to be able to do all this. So I started smoking pot, started taking pain pills, started tripping on LSD, started
Okay.
eating mushrooms,
Hmm.
started smoking PCP. Um, I will say this: I'm so thankful heroin and cocaine were not in my area at the time, because I definitely would have done that. Because
Right.
once I got the alcohol in my system, I was like, I had to F it. I was like, forget it. I'm just going to do it.
Sure.
That whole senior year, my whole senior year, I drank and drugged. Anything that was around the parties, I did.
Wow.
I graduate high school and I go into the Marine Corps. The drugs stopped. 100% the drugs stopped.
Okay.
But once I graduated boot camp and I got stationed at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, when we got off at 4 p.m. every day, a bunch of us would leave the base and go to the bars and go to the strip clubs, and we would drink.
Right.
And the bars around the base, their motto was, if you're old enough to take a bullet for this country, you're old enough to have a cold beer.
Okay.
So they would serve us at 18, 19, 20 years old. Their only rule was you couldn't stand at the bar with a beer in your hand. You had to take a sip and put it back down at the bar, just in case an authority walked in. They couldn't pin you, oh, you got the beer and you're underage drinking.
Right. Right.
But
Right.
they had no problems serving us all night long. And as 18, 19, 20-year-old men, we would see our sergeants at these same bars, late 20s, early 30s, and they're doing the same thing.
Right.
And they would just tell us, don't get locked up, and make sure you're up at 4 a.m. to go running and doing all your calisthenics and what we have to do for the day.
Right.
Other than that, we don't care how long you stay out and how messed up you get. Just don't get in trouble and make sure your ass is up at 4 a.m.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for young men who are learning from these older individuals, at least for me, I was kind of like, well, this is what we do. This is kind of like a badge of honor. How messed up can we get and still wake up at 4 a.m. and go run 5 miles and do push-ups and sit-ups and pull-ups and get the shit done that we were supposed to get done.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you,
Yeah,
Tim.
no, go ahead.
So I see a real parallel in our story there. I work for the fire department, and I always found it, now looking back, I always found it so strange that part of the culture, it's like a badge of honor. Like, you can go and take shots all night, drink, pound back beers, do, whatever you're going to do partying. But as long as you're there when the bell rings in the morning, you're like this unsung hero. Like, it's a very strange thing. But the line between the heavy drinker and the alcoholic in those worlds, it's like nobody wants to be called an alcoholic. And if you get deemed an alcoholic or an addict, you're kind of pushed to the side. But if you're a heavy drinker and the party guy, you're one of us. Right? Like,
Right.
you're a tough guy, or you're applauded for this sort of behavior, which I found, now looking back, I find really strange. And it probably parallels a lot with the military that way.
Oh, 100%, absolutely. And like you said, that there is a line there, but how thin is that damn line to where
Right.
you're a party monster and you're a go getter and you're a hard charger and you get the job done, to, oh, I think you're drinking a little too much and maybe we should kind of like pump the brakes here. Maybe you need some help.
Now you're a problem.
Where, yeah, where's
Yeah.
where's that line there? Because like you said, as long as you're up there and you're doing your job and you're there on time
Hmm.
and you're busting ass, it is kind of like, man, this guy can party and come to work and do his shit. Like,
Right.
so it is. It's
Twisted.
especially, it is twisted. And
Yeah.
especially as, I'm looking back, 18, 19, 20 years old, you're a freaking baby. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And you're learning from these adults.
Right.
And that's what I learned. That's what I thought I was supposed to be doing. So I did it as a professional.
Right. Right.
I did it very, very well.
Yeah.
I have no regrets now. But looking back, and I found a bunch of pictures a couple months ago, and it was us at the bars, and then there was pictures of me out in the parking lot throwing up, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at these pictures, and I specifically remember the nights that we were out,
Right.
the times we got into fist fights, the times that we went to these strip clubs, and just all the stuff that I did, and I'm like, would I have done that if I wasn't drinking?
Right.
And the answer was no.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have acted that way. I wouldn't have, gone out with ladies of the night and all that stuff, 18, 19, 20 years old if I was drinking.
Right.
And it I would say it affected me the other day when I saw the pictures
Mm-hmm.
from where I am now and how I've progressed to learn how I am and where I came from. I know it was just part of my story.
It's part of your story. Yeah, I love that.
That's it. I'm no longer there. And if I wouldn't have done that, then maybe I wouldn't be who the person I am today is. So I'm actually grateful that I went through that to be able to share my story with such truthfulness and authenticity. Because if I wouldn't have
Absolutely.
experienced that, who the hell would I be to be able to show you my story?
Exactly.
But yeah, so I was in the Marines and we were drinking every day. And 1995, my unit, we went to Somalia for a couple months to do training. Now, this was not during wartime. There was no war going on. I'm not a combat veteran, but we were there after it was Operation United Shield. So we were there for they call policing the place, which is basically cleaning up and security. So we were there, and I got to see the ramifications of what war did to a third world country.
Right. Right.
And when I came home, I had about 3 months left before I got discharged. And when I came home, I was affected. I got out and I came home, and the first month was kind of cool. I was kind of like, man, I don't have to get up at 4 o'clock this morning. I ain't got to go running. I don't have to shave today. I don't have to get my hair cut. It was kind of a decompression. Like, okay, cool. I'm out of the military. I can relax a little bit. The second month came, and I was like, oh shit, I got to get a job.
Right.
I got to start paying some rent here. I moved back in with my mom. I got to get a car. I got to start taking care of some responsibilities. The third month came when I was home, and I fell into a deep depression. I stopped
Okay.
showering. I stopped shaving. I didn't want to leave my bedroom. I'm now drinking every single day because that never stopped. But now I'm doing drugs again because now I don't have any drug testing. So I
Right.
fell right back into where I was previously from going in the Marines. I came home and started hanging out with all my old friends from high school and started
Sure.
going to parties and started doing everything that I did before. That third month, I was sitting in my bedroom and I was beating myself up. How could I go from this athlete to this Marine to now I'm home and I'm telling myself I'm worthless. I'm a piece of shit. And I don't have a job. I don't have a vehicle. I can't pay my rent to my mom. And I'm beating myself up. And I go into my stepfather's armoire one day and I pull out his gun and I sit it on my lap.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting there looking at it and I'm honestly lost. I don't know what to do. So I call my girlfriend at the time. I'm like, hey, I'm sitting there looking at this gun on my lap. I don't know what I'm doing.
Wow.
And within 5 minutes, she came to my house and she took it from me and put it back in my stepfather's armoire. And when my mom came home from work that night, I didn't tell her I had my stepfather's gun in my lap, but I told her something was wrong. I'm not feeling myself. I'm depressed. So she said, well, we need to get you to the doctors and see what's going on. So she made some appointments for me. We got to the doctors. After going through all the medical testing, they came back and told me I had bipolar 1 disorder, manic depressant. And their first solution was to get me on medicines.
Oh God. Can I just ask you real quick about
Yeah.
so the exit plan or strategy from the military? I think this is really important to touch on. Like, what is that reintegration process like? And I know that it's, quite some years ago, but are they, because it really boggles my mind to me that they're the military trains you to be like a certain type of person, and capable
Yeah.
of certain things that civilians aren't. Most civilians aren't. And I've always wondered what that process is like. And do you feel like you're prepared to come back into regular life as a civilian? And were there things in place, or was it like, here's your pay, go ahead, this stuff is here, but you have to seek it out?
That's exactly it. In 1995, when I got out, I was discharged. Here's your DD 214, your discharge papers.
Right.
Here is a packet to the Veterans Affairs location in your state, and you contact them for any further assistance. Here you go. Here's your bags. Here's the bus to go home.
And that's it.
That's it.
It's up to you
That
then.
was
It's up to you then to make those phone calls, to pick up that 1,000-pound phone when things are, like you said, in month 3 now, dealing with, I'm sure there's a level of PTSD from the things that you saw over there, and your childhood experiences, as well as your time, using and abusing drugs and alcohol. Like, we all pick up these traumatic events along the way, but to add to that, you're visiting a war-torn country, seeing the fallout of that, um, you know, it boggles my mind to me that there's not a mandatory program to say you must go through these steps and you have to do this testing for us to know, are you capable of re-entering society after what you've seen?
you would think so and hope so, but
Yeah,
unfortunately, it's almost it's like, okay, well, you're out of the military now. You're no longer a use to us. Good luck.
that's
That's
crazy.
basically how it used to be. I'm pretty sure it's probably the damn same now.
So
It might be
yeah,
they might be a little better now. I mean, we're talking 95, so we're almost 30 years ago, 27 years ago, 26 years ago.
right.
But when they handed us the papers, that was literally, here's your discharge papers, here's your bus ticket, and here's the packet to the VA in your state of Maryland. When you go home, make the phone calls and get in and talk to your VA counselor and psychologist and psychiatrist. But thanks for your service. Take care.
And it's on you
That
from
that's
there.
it.
Yeah.
That's it. And in '95, PTSD wasn't a thing like it is
Right.
today. There was
Right.
there was no PTSD was not even an acronym. It didn't exist back then.
Yeah,
Now you can't tell me the government didn't know that these Marines and these soldiers coming out of combat were not messed up mentally and
of
physically.
course.
They
Yeah.
absolutely did, but they didn't have a program set up like they do now as far as post traumatic stress disorder.
And not only that, but like, I mean, and I could speak to this too in my profession, like the idea of talking about that to somebody else, to another, man to man, and the attitude that goes along with that job, this like, suck it up, you're paid well to do a job, this is your job, you're lucky to have it, these cliche things, be a man, suck it up, walk it off, this sort of, and don't talk about your feelings. Like, I was told on day 1 of the fire department never to show weakness because we prey on our weak around here. You know what I
Yep.
mean? And I know that that's the same in the military. And you know that that attitude and that kind of that like sort of mantra that goes goes along with these first responder professions. I mean, it really stifles a lot of people from asking for the help or talking about what they're seeing, even peer to peer.
No, dude, I'm so glad you brought that up because I actually every Thursday on Zoom I hold a men's mental health and addiction counseling 1 hour show on Zoom, and
Oh,
it's open to
really?
the public. Yeah, it just started last week. I'm working with a 5013c3 nonprofit, Rockstar Testimony, Love Light to the World, and I run the men's mental health department on that. It's every Thursday at 7 p.m.
Perfect. I'll add it to the show notes. Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah, because
Amazing.
I just finished my second week doing it. It all came to head about 3 weeks ago. They worked out all the kinks on the website, and
Cool.
but now I do the men's mental health section. I'm also running actually this Friday. I leave to go to Half Moon Bay, California.
Okay.
I'm being flown out there to speak on mental health and addiction to first responders, military,
Wow.
police, fire, EMT on the mental health and addiction part of the trauma that we all see.
Amazing.
And I'll be out there from the 23rd to the 25th speaking at this second annual fundraiser for the Overwatch Collection, which are two former Marines, both police officers now. And what they do is they try to give back to the men. And the reason I'm saying that is because you are 100% correct about the professions that most men do.
Right.
Suck it up, man up. Don't talk about your feelings. But the truth of the matter is, even men, believe it or not, go through trauma.
Yeah.
Men get abused. Men get raped.
Yep.
Men are supposed to be the strong, part of society where we don't have any weakness.
Right.
The true bravery, the true courage is admitting that we have weaknesses and doing something about it, and sharing your story and being open about it, just like you and I are speaking now.
Mm-hmm.
You and I, if we were walking down the street, most people would probably walk across the other side, just because we're alpha males. We don't look like we're very friendly people sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, it is, we're not soft looking
I get
people.
what you're saying. Yeah.
But man, we go through it. We go through it too.
Yeah.
We go through it too. And you don't have to be a fighter. You don't have to be a firefighter. You don't have to be a Marine. You don't have to be some person who's in great shape and looks like he could tear a head off of somebody to not have feelings. We all have feelings, and we all go through shit. And we need to know that it takes more strength and courage to admit that and speak about it than it does to hold it in.
Absolutely.
There's no bravery in not holding or holding in your feelings and not speaking about it, because all that's going to do is implode. And when it comes out, man, there's going to be some damage.
Yeah. Yeah. And we all know that. And, by keeping it in, you're doing more harm to yourself, and you're not giving other people the chance to, to have that door open to a conversation about emotions, about feelings, about stuff that guys are typically not supposed to talk about. And I think the more people like us who are just, able to freely share this information and speak from the heart, and not, with no fear of judgment. I think that's what needs to be shown a lot more. And I think that is what will encourage others who might be in that sort of box, that like, no, I can't, I look like this, or people expect this from me, or I'm, quote, whatever a firefighter, a cop, military, whatever it may be, that isn't supposed to show their feelings and, emotions. If we're talking about it, then they can, right? We're giving people the chance to open that door to a conversation that needs to be had.
Yeah, and it goes hand in hand with addiction. The longer you don't deal with it, the more it compounds, the more it gets bigger, and the stronger it takes you over. And it's amazing. It's not amazing, but it's not surprising to me that it goes hand in hand, because it's just when you're in addiction, we're basically just numbing out the feelings and pain of something that we don't want to deal with. And then we realize we're numbing out the pains of the stuff that we don't want to deal with, and we feel bad about numbing out the pain, so we numb out more because we still don't want to feel about it.
It's
just the cycle goes on and on and on, and before you know it, you're so deep in the hole that, for me, I wanted to give up. So, when I got to talk to those doctors at 23, the first thing was to put me on medicine, and
right.
I'm bringing that up because I wasn't honest with my doctors. I didn't tell them I was drinking every day and I was back doing drugs.
Okay.
So the medicines that they were putting me on were not working. So when I went back every 30 or 60, 90 days, whenever my checkup was to see how my medicines were doing, they would say, "How's things going?"
Mm-hmm.
"It's not working, doc. I don't know what the problem is. I'm still depressed. Or I'm still having my manic episodes.
Right.
I still can't sleep. I'm still having racing thoughts. I don't know what the problem is." Okay, well, maybe those medicines weren't for you, and we'll just switch you over to these medicines.
Right.
I'd go back another 30, 60, 90 days. How you doing? Same thing, nothing's working. Okay, well, maybe we'll put you on these three and we'll up the dosages. Maybe the milligrams are off. Maybe that cocktail didn't work. So we'll stick you on this cocktail. If you go to see a doctor and they diagnose you with some type of mental illness or mental disorder and they put you on medicines, please be honest with your doctors, because they only know what you tell them. So
Yes.
they're going off of what you're telling them. And if you're not being honest, if you're being distruthful, and you're not indulging them that, hey, I'm doing all this extracurricular stuff,
Yeah.
and the medicine that you're putting me on isn't going to work anyway.
Yeah.
What's the real issue then? Like,
And
let's
doing
let's
more
get down.
damage on top of that, right? Like, yeah.
Absolutely. And being the addict with the addictive behavior, and seeing that pill bottle that said, "Oh, alcohol intensity effects." Okay,
Right.
let's
Sure.
go.
Yeah.
To me, it was an extra party, because now I got my own thing prescribed by the doctors. I have some
Yeah.
alcohol, and got me some extra effects.
Yeah. This episode of the Authentic Adversity podcast is brought to you and sponsored by Another Road Drug and Alcohol Treatment Center. Another Road offers a client-centered recovery program tailored to every individual's circumstances. Their focus is to create a supportive, healing environment rather than a rigid, rule-based institution. Their dedicated commitment upholds the individual values respecting each person's desire for recovery. Another Road understands that every individual requires a unique and focused approach to their recovery. Certain modalities of treatment are introduced along with the tools necessary for each client. Located in a rural setting, their addiction treatment center for all genders provides the perfect setting for a transformative recovery experience and sense of belonging. The private residential treatment facility offers an unparalleled program with counselors that have in-depth knowledge based on varying years of experience in addiction. Another Road utilizes unique, individual-focused plans for recovery that address the complexities of drug addiction, alcoholism, and prescription medication misuse. They have a 65% success rate when clients follow their program. I know many people who have completed this program, and they have absolutely rave reviews. To learn more, visit anotherroad.ca. Your doctor's prescribing you meds, you're lying to him about it. Now you're drinking to intensify the effect of these medications.
Yeah. So, and that went on all the way up until I went into rehab at the age 44.
Wow.
I would be on and off medicines. I would get to the point where I don't need this medicine anymore. It's not working anyway, so I would just stop taking it. And after a month or two, I'd have my crashes and be back to the doctor, getting back on medicine. And
Okay.
that was just a cycle for 20 years. It really was just on and off medicines. And I got into my 30s. I'm now married with two girls, and I just lost another job. And I've been employed 46 times since being out of the Marine Corps.
Wow.
And I attribute that to my mental illness and my addiction and alcoholism.
Okay.
I never had control of it. I would keep a job for 3 months, 6 months, sometimes 9 months, and just quit or call out sick and just not go back, or just get
Yeah.
bored of it. And I never really pinpointed why. I just tell myself, oh, this just isn't the job for me. I'm just not passionate about it. Let me do something else.
Right.
And the fact of the matter is, I didn't have my mental health in check, and I wasn't taking care of myself. And that's why I slingshotted from job to job to job.
Yeah.
But I got to the age of 32, and I just lost another job. My wife's like, "What's going on?" I'm like, I don't know. I'm lost. I miss competing. I miss sports. I miss feeling like I'm worth something. And she's like, "Well, what do you want to do?" I'm like, "I really want to do mixed martial arts." I said, "I miss that one-on-one contact. I miss that competitive spirit." And she's like,
Yeah.
"Okay." She's like, "I will give you 1 year."
Okay.
She's like, our bills are paid. You're collecting unemployment. She's like, 1 year. If you can get fights and you can make some money and it makes you happy, but after 1 year, if we're not doing anything with it, you've got to let it go and you got to get back to work. So I said, okay. So I went down to the local gym, Ground Control, who's ran by a gentleman named John Rollo here in Baltimore,
Okay.
and went down there and started training. And within like 5 months, I had my first fight. And fast forward 3 years later, I'm still fighting,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
now I'm fighting at Harris Casino, Atlantic City. I'm fighting on television. I got sponsors, but I wasn't making that much money, like $1,500 a fight. You know,
Right, right.
the local shows, you don't make too much money, but I found my purpose for a while. You know, there's no drug or alcohol that I can ever compare to coming out of the locker room with the music going and the lights going and people cheering and clapping. Dude, that adrenaline rush that
Yeah.
you get when you're about to step into a cage is unmatched by anything I think I've ever been through, including the Marines, because you know it's one on one, it's you or him, and once they lock that cage behind you, that's it. It's game time. It's
Yep.
like it's go,
Yeah.
and that feeling, it was just incredible to me. So I'm now 35, and I'm fighting in Harris Casino, and it's live broadcasted on the East Coast, and I tear my rotator cuff doing a rear naked choke, and I get to the end of the match, and I go to the locker room, and I can't lift my right arm. And
Oh,
my trainer's looking at me. He's like, "What's going on?" I say, "I don't know, man." I say, I can't lift my right arm. It's burning, like all this sensation." He's like, "Okay." So I go out to the casino area, and I have like 25 of my friends and family there. And my wife
right.
comes up to me, and she hands me a beer, and I grab it with my left hand. Now, even though I write and draw with my left hand, I'm right hand dominant, so I can use both my hands. And she's like, "Why'd you just grab the beer with the left hand?" Like, she noticed it all immediately.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can't lift my right arm. She's like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "I did something to it." She's like, "Jesus Christ." She's like, "That's it. You're done." She's
Really?
like, you're 35." She's like, "You're done." Yeah, she's like, "We got to go to the doctors to see what happens." So I go to the doctors. I tore my labrum in 3 places and had to get rotator cuff surgery like within a week. It was like immediate.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
I had major surgery on my rotator cuff, and that started a 4 year long pain pill prescription addiction that was prescribed to me by my doctors. And it first started with hydrocodones, and I would go back after my 30 or 60 days when the script was up, and he would say, "Hey, how you doing?" "Doc, I'm still in pain. You know, those hydrocodones aren't really taking the edge off." "Okay, well,
Right.
we'll switch you to Percocets. We'll give you Perc 10s. Go back after 30, 60 days. How's that working?" The perks are working, but they're messing up my stomach, because they did. They knotted my stomach up for some reason. "Okay, well, we're just going to put you on Oxycontins, because that seems to really work for everybody, and we'll put
Hmm.
you on 20 milligram Oxycontins." So now I'm taking 20 milligram Oxycontins. I'm drinking a 12 pack of beer a day, and I'm smoking probably about a quarter of weed every single day.
Right.
And this goes on for 4 years. And like every good addict, I wouldn't take one pill every 4 hours. I would take two or three every 4 hours. I would finish my prescription 2 weeks before it was getting refilled. So I'd have to call my buddies and say, "Hey, can you hook me up for the next 10, 12 days until my prescription gets
Yeah.
refilled?" So I was getting it off the streets. And I got scared. I,
Okay.
I literally was in my bedroom one day, and I was like, "Man, this is how people die. I'm taking all this pain medicine, and I'm drinking all this alcohol. I could go to sleep one night and not freaking wake up,
Right.
and I don't want that to happen." And my addictive personality, my mental illness, steps in and says, "Well, if it's going to happen, we're going to do it by our own hand." And I reach over to my nightstand, and I open up my bottle of Oxycontins, and I dumped it out of my hand. Had 18 of them,
Right.
and I take all 18 of them, and I go out into the living room, and I slam a 12 pack of beer like in an hour.
Yeah.
And I go back into my bedroom, and I remember laying on the bed saying, "Please God, don't let me wake up, because I just want the pain to go away, and I don't know how to stop."
Right.
And I go to sleep, and I wake up the next day like 16 hours later, and I remember waking up being like, "Holy shit, I woke up." Um, and I go into the bathroom where my refill's sitting on the counter, and I open up the bottle, and I dump the entire refill down into the toilet, and I flush the toilet. And I remember looking at myself in the mirror and saying, "I don't care how bad this gets. We're never taking pain medicine again." And for the next 10 days, I was probably the sickest I think I've ever been in my entire life.
Right.
The whole gambit of coming off opioids, the racing thoughts, the jitters, the night sweats, the insomnia, the panic attacks, the anxiety, the going to the bathroom, the throwing up, the fever, the whole thing. But every morning when I woke up, I would look in the mirror and tell myself, remember this feeling. We're never going through that again. That was the last time I've ever taken pain medicine.
Wow. Good
And
for you, man.
I couldn't stop drinking. I just couldn't stop drinking.
Yeah.
So for me, I was like, let me take a ride. I got to clear my head. So I get in my truck and I go through this park that we have down here in Maryland. It's a really beautiful reservoir where people take their boats out and go hiking and walk their dogs and picnic. And I'm driving through the park and I get to this tree where my senior year of high school, my best friend lost control of his car and hit the tree and unfortunately died at the age of 18. And at this tree, his parents set up a little vigil. They have a picture of him on the tree. You can put flowers on the tree, and there's a book there, still from 1996,
Oh,
that
wow.
you can write in and just leave them stories. And like every couple months, they'll put a new book because the book fills up.
Wow.
And I get to the tree. This is March 16th, 2017. So this is 21
Okay.
years after he passed. And I get up to the tree and I'm like, Bill, I'm like, man, I'm lost, brother. I was like, I can't stop drinking. I'm an addict. I'm losing all these jobs. I'm disappointing my family, my friends. I just don't know why I'm here. I need to know that I'm not alone, that there's something else out there. Because to be honest with you, I had no faith in anything.
Right.
I couldn't comprehend if there was a higher power somewhere out there that I would be suffering so much and so many other people would be suffering if there was such thing as a higher power.
Yeah.
So I was like, please just send me a sign that I'm not alone, that there's something else out there, that I have a purpose in life because I truly don't know why I'm here. And I get in my truck and I go to leave the park. Well, now I'm crying and I can barely drive. So I pull over on the side of the road, but I didn't pull over on the right hand side where traffic was. I pulled over on the wrong side of the road facing oncoming traffic and I park.
Okay.
And I'm sitting there crying for about 10 minutes. And this car pulls up and we're hood to hood, bumper to bumper, and I'm watching this man. He gets out of his vehicle and he opens up his back door and he gets his dog and he's about to go walk the dog across the street where the water is. And I'm looking at this man and I'm like, man, he looks awfully familiar.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden it dawns on me, it was my best friend who died December 27th, 1996. It was his father.
Wow.
And I hadn't seen him since the day of my friend's funeral
No
21
way.
years earlier. So I get out of my truck and I'm like, Mr. Bill, is that you? And he looks at me. He's like, Timmy, what's going on? Why are you here? And I fall to the curb and I start crying. I'm like, Mr. Bill, I'm an alcoholic. I'm an addict. I don't know why I'm here. I don't know what my purpose is. I'm lost. And he walks over to me and he puts his hand on my shoulder and he's like, Timmy, I'm not supposed to be here this morning. I'm supposed to be in South Carolina at a family reunion trip. I was supposed to leave at 6 a.m. this morning. He said, my wife came to me in a dream last night and told me to come walk the dog this morning at 10 a.m. He goes, I think I was
No
sent here to
way.
see you. And I said,
Yeah.
Mr. Bill, I just stopped at Billy's tree and asked him to send me a sign that I wasn't alone, that something else was out there. And we hugged and we talked, and he was like, everything's going to be okay, Timmy. They're watching over us. Everything's going to be okay. And I go to leave the park, and for about 10 minutes, I'm like, man, I'm feeling good. I'm like, there's something else out there. I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
Everything's going to be all right. I'm being watched over. Nothing's going to happen to me. And then all of a sudden, my mental illness, my addiction steps in and says, you're absolutely right. Nothing is going to happen to you. You're being protected. So you don't have to stop drinking anymore because
Oh.
nothing is going to happen to you. You can continue to live your life the way that you are because you're being protected and watched. So for the next 4 years, from 2017 to 2021 to the day I went to rehab, I drank the most alcohol I've ever drank in my entire life.
Isn't that
Um,
wild, man? Like that you finally, there's your sign, right? Like there's your I'm not alone, and our addictions can warp that positive message, that real piece of hope something to grab onto and kind of pull yourself out of that deep, dark hole. But we twist it and say, okay, now we're invincible. We're being watched over. Let's go. It's like,
That addiction is cunning, baffling, and it doesn't stop until it takes your life. And that's
certainly,
its goal.
yeah,
That's its goal, and it manipulates you to what it wants you to do. And when you're powerless over that, you tend to listen,
yeah,
unfortunately, to what it's telling you.
right.
So, the next 4 years, 12 beers went to 18 beers some days, and the regular beer wasn't doing it for me. I switched to the IPAs and the lagers, the 10, 11% beers, and I was still drinking 12 to 18 of them, which
Right.
is equivalent of like double that of regular, like Miller Lite
Yeah.
or the regular beers. And I'm like, man, I'm missing something. I'm just missing something because now I don't have the pain pills,
Right.
and I'm missing that cocktail because I like the way the pain pills made me feel and drinking some beers. I like that warm blanket, fuzzy feeling that you got.
Yes.
So I started drinking some whiskey. I would start off with a couple little miniatures of Fireball whiskey, and I found that once I took two or three of them, I would get that warm feeling that
Right.
pain pills gave me, and it was almost instantaneously. Once it
Hmm.
hit your system, you'd have that euphoria of the whiskey getting in your body. So I was like, oh shit, okay, now I found what I've been missing. So over the years, I stopped drinking beer, and I just switched straight to whiskey.
Okay.
And my addictive personality steps in and told me, don't buy a big bottle of Fireball whiskey because then you'll know exactly how much you're drinking.
Yes.
Buy the little miniatures. You can drink them and throw them out the window or throw them in the trash and forget how much you're drinking. And you can hide them all over the place. And when you want one, you can go swig one down and throw it away. And nobody will know exactly how much you're drinking.
Yeah. And you know what? It's hilarious that you say that because I'm like laughing because I can completely understand it. And like any alcoholic or addict would totally get that concept. But anyone who's not one of us is like, what the fuck's this guy's problem? Like, why not just go big? What's you're taking these little shots of these mini bottles but it does make it like we try to manipulate our own selves to think that no, you didn't just drink a 40-pounder, you didn't just drink this much. These are just minis, and
Yeah,
who knows how many you've had. Like, there's no it almost alleviates us for the accountability of what we're taking in.
100%.
Hmm.
Absolutely. And I got to tell you, it would be kind of cool sometimes opening up my medicine cabinet or moving a coffee cup and finding a bottle there. I'm like, oh shit, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
I'm in my sock drawer or in my truck, and but yeah, it got to the point where I would wake up and stop at the liquor store at 7 a.m. in the morning,
Hmm.
and I would get a sleeve of Fireball whiskey, which is 10 of them still in a pack, and I would drink all 10 of those by 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Right.
I would finish work, get off at 3:30, and go immediately to the liquor store before I even went home, and
Right.
I'd get another sleeve of Fireball. I'd get 10 more, and I would drink all 10 of those by 8 o'clock at night. And if I was feeling it, I'd get my ass back in my truck and go to the liquor store and get 10 more
Yeah.
and drink 5 to 10 of those before I passed out.
Hmm.
So, right before I went into rehab, I was drinking 25 to 30 miniatures a day.
Right.
And one day I was kind of like, I wonder how much alcohol is in here. So, I poured out one of the miniature bottles, and one miniature is 2.5 shots.
Okay.
So
So
2.5 times 30. I did the calculation like a couple months ago. I'm drinking anywhere between 70 and 85 shots of Fireball whiskey per
Jesus.
day
Yeah.
for over a year and a half. And it got to the point where I got a brand new truck, and I'm leaving the liquor store. The truck's like 2 months old, and I'm leaving a liquor store, and I hit something. And I still to this day do not know what I hit. I don't know if it was a parked car, a sign, a concrete barrier. I have no idea. But I get home and I park my vehicle in the driveway, and I walk in and I told my wife, I just hit something. I'm going to bed. I'm not dealing with this shit tonight. I'll deal with it tomorrow. And I
Okay.
go to sleep. I wake up the next morning like a good alcoholic. Hey, good morning. I'm going to go to the store and get some water and some milk. And you guys need anything from the store? And she just looks at me. She's like, how are you going to do that? I was like, in my brand new truck in the driveway. She's like, Tim, go look at your vehicle. So I go outside, and my side passenger mirror is completely off the truck, and my right passenger tire is hanging off the rim, and the rim's up underneath of the bumper.
Oh,
I don't know how I drove it home.
yeah.
Only thing I can say is I was a block away. Like, the liquor store is almost across the street from my house. I'm pretty sure I just got in it and was like, fuck this, I'm going home. Like, I'm getting into
Right.
my driveway. And I'm sitting there looking at the truck, and I'm like, what the hell happened? And my wife pops her head out the front door. She's like, you have no idea what you hit last night, do you? And I said, no, I don't remember.
Wow.
She said, Tim, you could have killed yourself. You could have killed somebody else.
Yeah.
You can't stay here anymore. I don't want you around the girls. You have to leave and go figure this out, but I don't want you in the house anymore. I said, okay. So I go inside and I pack my bags, and I call a friend of mine. I'm like, hey, bud, is there any way I can come and stay with you for a couple of days? Let things blow over. In a couple of days,
Right.
she'll forget, and I can come back in the house and just proceed with my life. And he's like, sure, man, come on over. You can come over for as many days as you need. So I go over there, and he's like, your wife just kicked you out. You don't have to go home. It's Friday night. We might as well go to the bar. And I'm like, you know what? Absolutely. Because now I have a justified reason to go. My wife just
Right.
kicked me out. So I'm going to go drink, because now it's a legitimate reason to drink. So I go to the bar, and we get shit faced. And it's like 12, 16 hours later, as I'm leaving the bar, I rear end somebody at a red light.
Wow.
And I
Jeez.
get out, and I look at the guy. He actually had a tow hitch on the back of his truck. So his truck wasn't not a scratch on it, but now the front of my bumper's all V'd in. And I'm like, "Are you okay, man?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm okay." I said, "Well, your truck's okay. You're okay. I'm
Right.
out of here." And I slapped him on his back, and I bolted. I got out of there. And if the cops came, I was going to jail. I was drunk. And
Yeah.
so I get back to my buddy's house. I'm like, man, I can't stay here. I just got to go be by myself. I got to go think about what the hell's going on.
Right.
And I leave his house, stop at the liquor store, and I get 10 more miniatures. And I go and I park my car at a park and ride, which is, where people park the car for the day and catch a train or a bus
Sure.
to their
Yeah.
job. And I sit down and I turn my phone off. I'm like, I don't want to hear from anybody. I don't want to talk to anybody. I just want to sit here and wallow in my sorrows and do the whole pity party. I'm a piece of shit thing, and don't want to be bothered. And for the next 2 days, for 48 hours, I sit in my truck and I drink and I pass out and I listen to sad ass music, and I do the whole my kids are better off without me, my wife's better off without me, my mom deserves a better son, like I'm just a piece of shit, I don't deserve to live. And I drink myself and pass out and drink, excuse me, and pass out and drink and pass out. And finally, the second day, at 7 minutes after 10 on March 5th, 2021, I turn my phone on after 48 hours. 2 minutes goes by and the phone rings. And I look down at it and it says Westchester, Pennsylvania. I'm like, who the hell is this? And so I pick it up. And it's my childhood friend, Brandon Novak, on the other end.
Right.
And he's like, Lodgen, what the fuck are you doing? And I'm like, I'm cold, I'm drunk, I'm hungry, I'm tired. And he says, good, motherfucker, that's what you need. He said, I just got off the phone with your wife and your mom. I have a plane ticket set for you this evening. You're going to go down to Banyan Treatment Centers in West Palm Beach, Florida, and you're going to go get the help you need to save your life. And I'm on the other line. I'm like, yeah, okay, man, okay, I'll go, I'll go. I'm pretty much just agreeing with him so I can hang up the phone at that
Right.
point.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And he's like, get on that plane. Get on that plane. And he hangs up. 10 minutes goes by, I think, and my wife calls. She said, hey, I just got off the phone with Brandon. Where are you? I'm like, I'm at the park and ride. She's like, please come home, pack your bags, take a shower, take a nap, and try to get something to eat. I had about 4 hours for the plane to leave.
Okay.
I'm like, okay, okay. So I go home, I take a shower, and I pack my bags. I can't eat and I can't sleep because now I'm having an anxiety attack. I'm having a panic attack. My mind's racing. I'm like, oh my God, how did I get myself in this situation?
Yeah.
Now I got to go to rehab. How long am I going to rehab for? Is it
Right.
30, 60, 90 days, 6 months? I don't know. And I got to go down to Florida. Like, holy shit, my life, I just ruined my life. Like, how did it get this bad? And I'm sitting on the edge of my bed And I'm like, man, I can't do this. I'm like, I'm so nervous, and I'm just thinking about everything. And my mental illness steps in one last time, and it tries to take my life. Because it doesn't stop.
Yeah.
It doesn't stop. It tries to take your life, and it grabs me by the hand and says, "Come with me." And my addiction and mental illness walks me to the basement of my home, and it throws a rope around my neck, and I stand up on a bucket, and it tells me to end the pain, and it tells me to jump. And I go to the
Jeez.
basement of my house, and I put the rope around my neck, and I stand up on the bucket. And about a minute, maybe two goes by. My wife realizes I'm not in the bedroom, so she comes looking for me.
Right.
She comes down to the basement of our home and sees me in the corner of our basement, standing on a bucket with a rope around my neck, hysterically crying. And she's like,
Jeez.
"What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I can't do it. I
Yeah.
can't. I just want the pain to stop, and I don't know how. I just want it to stop." And she looks at me and she's like, "Tim, do you know what this would do to your little girls?
Yeah.
Please, please get down and get on that plane. Please get on that plane and everything will be okay. Just get down." And about a minute goes by, and I take the rope around my neck, and I fall to the floor, and I'm crying. And 10 minutes goes by, and I go upstairs and I call my buddy. I'm like, "Hey, I got to get on that plane, man. If I don't get on that plane tonight, this addiction's going to kill me. And
Yeah.
I want to live. I can't do that." And all he says is, "I'm proud of you. I love you. Call me when you're past security, because I want to make sure your ass is getting on that plane and you're not going to catch a cab and leave the airport." I'm like, "Okay, okay." So I hang up the phone. Some hours go by. My mom comes and picks me up and drives me to the airport. And I get past security and I call him. I'll say, "Hey, buddy, I got about 35 minutes for the plane leaves. I just want you to know I'm past security. I'm getting on the plane." And all he says is, "I'm proud of you. I love you. You're about to get back everything that you've lost times 10." And he hangs up the phone.
It's just like, like, I mean, addicts in recovery that are living the life that they should, they just know how to talk to somebody who is sick and suffering and in that place, because we've all been there in one way,
Yeah,
shape, or form, right? And just to hear that, "I'm proud of you and I love you," and to give you those words of encouragement. I mean, that there, like those three simple things can do so much for somebody who's at that place in life, right? Like
yeah.
it's
Because
amazing.
when you feel worthless, and you don't know why you're here, and how much of a piece of shit you feel, when somebody tells you they love you and they're proud of you,
Yeah.
that definitely does something. It
Yeah.
gives you some motivation. It gives you some encouragement. It gets rid of your doubt for it's in some sense. It kind of is like, I can do this.
And somebody
Um,
loves you when you can't love yourself. They're acting as your higher power at that moment, right? Like, even though I know you don't love yourself, I love you, and let's do this, right? Like, that is so
yeah,
powerful. Yeah.
it's amazing. And as I hang up the phone, as I go to sit down in the chair waiting for them to call me to board my plane, when I sit down in this chair in this airport, I get this overwhelming feeling that comes over my entire body. It was a warm blanket feeling that I have never felt in my entire life. At that exact moment, as I sat down, my worry, my panic, my anxiety, my doubts, my fears all leave my body at the
Wow.
same time.
Jeez.
And it was the most amazing experience I've ever felt in my life. And as I'm sitting there and this warm feeling is coming over my body, I hear this very loving and gentle woman's voice in my head say, "Everything is going to be okay." It was one of the most amazing experiences I've ever felt in my life.
I
And
bet.
I knew at that moment, sitting in that airport, finally, after 27 years, at the age of 44 years old, I was right where I needed to be to save my life and to get the help I needed.
Wow.
If I were not to acknowledge that experience in that airport,
Yeah.
what a waste of life this would have been. Something happened to me in that airport. I truly believe I had a spiritual experience in that airport. And since that day in that airport, I have not once thought about drugs or alcohol. I have not craved drugs or alcohol. I have not wanted it. I have not thought about it. I believe that the power of addiction was taken from me at that airport. That experience was too powerful for me not to acknowledge. And when I got on that plane and I got to rehab, I went addicted mode into rehab.
Yeah.
I didn't miss any meetings. I went to extra meetings for fire, police, military, and EMT.
Cool. Yeah.
I shared my story. I volunteered. I did all the homework. I started working out with a personal trainer Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I changed my diet. I started believing in a higher power at that point because what happened to me at that airport was undeniable. So I started believing in a higher power, and it it changed not my life. It changed me as a human being. It changed me as a man, as a husband, as a father, as a son. Something switched in my head. It completely 180. And I'm now focused on sharing my story. I was so lost. I didn't think I had a purpose. I didn't think there was a reason for me to be here. And there was a gentleman in rehab. He's like, I didn't share it first for like the first 2, 3 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but I shared with like when there was like five of us together. Five of us like really became kind of close in rehab, and he's sitting next to me one day, and we're at a meeting of 60, and he's like nudging me with his elbow. I'm like, what? He's like, share your story. I'm like, nah, man, I can't, not in front of all these people. He's like, share your story. And I'm like, nah, man, and he did it for like a week. Every day when I sat next to him, he's like, share your story.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can't. He's like, Tim, he's like, share your story. I'm telling you. He's like, the way you share it, how authentic and truthful you are. He said, it's going to help somebody in here. Just share it once while you're here. Just share it. I'm like, finally, one day I was like, okay, fuck it, I'll share it.
Yeah.
Whatever, man. And I share my story, and I so many people came up to me after me sharing, and they were like, wow, thank you, I needed to hear that. Thank you, that was me. And so many of our parts in that story were similar. I really needed to hear that today. That just gave me hope. Just a bunch of different things people were saying to
Sure.
me.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, man, there was something to me sharing today. That was pretty cool. Yeah, that's all I really thought at that moment. That was pretty cool. I got some cool feedback. That's really
Yeah.
neat. And I get out of rehab. I did 32 days, and I come home, and the first thing they tell you to do is find a home group, find a sponsor.
Hmm.
So I go and I'm looking for a home group, and I download a meeting app on my phone, and I'm like, oh shit, this one's only 10 minutes from my house. Let me go to that one. It's the closest one I found.
Okay.
So I get to it, and it's called Over the Rainbow. And I'm like, okay, it's this little brown building, and I walk in, and it's packed. There's like 30, 40 people in this place.
Right.
I'm like, okay, let me give this a shot. And I sit down, like 10 minutes goes by, and all of a sudden it starts thunderstorming. And lights are flickering, it's bad. And then after 5 minutes, it stops. And a lady walks in from outside. She says, everybody come outside and look at the rainbow over our building. And we all
Okay.
go outside, and there's a rainbow only over our building. And
No.
the sky is clear. And I'm looking up at the sky. I'm like, okay, I get it. I'm right where I need to be.
Yeah.
You've been watching me. No more coincidences. Like, I get it now. You're sending me signs, and I need to acknowledge them from here on out because something's happening. And I made that my home group, and I've been there ever since. And I did 98 meetings in 90 days. I found a sponsor. I started working the steps. And after the 98 and 90, I dialed it back to 4 days a week because I wanted to start focusing more on balance of mental, spiritually, and physical. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I got myself back into the gym. I started spending more time with my family. Going to work. I would go to work, come home, go to the gym. and then I would push my meetings to the weekends, two on Saturday, two on Sunday, and I found that helped me find my balance. It really
Right.
did.
I think that's important to mention because a lot of people go from living a life of active addiction straight into like, I'm going to hit 2 meetings a day for 7 days a week, and this is my new life. And they don't build a life outside of that, outside of the rooms, essentially, right? Like they're not taking care of themselves physically. They're not building relationships with people outside of the meetings. So it's all addict to addict or alcoholic to alcoholic, fellowship, which is great. But we're supposed to be out there as useful, purposeful members of society. That means being, having relationships outside of the rooms, having, passions and hobbies that don't involve sitting in a church basement and talking about how
Abs-
bad it used to be. Right.
Absolutely, yeah, and I'm
Yeah.
glad you brought that up because it got to a point where I dialed it back now. I do 2 meetings a week now. I make
Yeah.
sure I still go to 2 meetings, but about 3 months into my recovery, I started following different people on Instagram. I'm like, oh, I'm going to start following some sober apps and some recovery pages and recovery podcasts. I was like, just to get some different information because unfortunately, when you go to the same meeting for a year and the same 40 people share their story
Yeah.
for the 15th time, and you know the next sentence that's coming out of their mouth, you have to keep it fresh. Um, it helps you to a point, and then it could become stagnant. I believe, for at least it did for me.
I get that.
I needed fresh information coming in.
Yeah, and you can almost
So
build a resentment for the meeting space and the people where it's like, no, this is not what this is counterproductive to what this meeting is about and what I'm here for. So
right,
what else is out there, right? Like,
absolutely, and and one of the guys that I met online, he was like, I said, "You go to meetings anymore?" He said, "Hey, man, I stopped going to meetings." I'm like, "Why?" He's like, "Because they're all stuck in 1986." I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "They
yeah,
all just keep bringing up how bad it was." He said, "What are they doing now in their life to abstain and keep from drinking? What are they doing now positive? Are they giving back to society? Are they helping other addicts and alcoholics?" He said, "I don't need to know how bad it was 30 years ago. I need to know how
right.
good it is now." I'm like, "Wow,
Yes.
I never thought of that." So about 3 months in, I was like, "Oh, these podcasts are really cool. I'm getting a lot of information because it was always somebody new. It was always a new story, and no matter who was speaking, at some point in their story, I connected with what they were saying, and it helped me. So I was like, I'm going to message some podcasts. Maybe I'll do a podcast and just share my story. So I messaged like I don't know, like literally like 20 podcasts one day and 4 or 5 of them got back to me and said, "Sure, you can come on and share." So I get on and I do a podcast, and it's my first one with Knocking Doors Down, Jason and Mikey out of California. And I do the podcast, and it goes good. And I think like two weeks later, it airs. And 4 days after it airs, I'm sitting in my truck getting ready to pick up a table to take it to Brandon Novak's recovery house. And I'm waiting for the guy to open the garage so I can load the table in the back of my truck. And the phone rings, and it doesn't say any name. And I just pick it up. I'm like, "Hello," and he's like, "Hey, is this Tim?" And I'm like, "Yeah, this is Tim. Who's this?" He's like, "This is Tony." I'm like, "Man, I really don't know any Tonys, man." I was like, "I'm sorry." He's like, "Prophet." He's like, I served with you in the Marine Corps in 1995. And I'm like, "Oh shit, wow, man. This is 2021.
Right.
Yeah, 26 years later." And I'm like, "What's going on?" He's like, "I listened to your podcast 4 days ago." I'm like, "That's awesome, man." He's like, "I live in Ohio." He said, "I had to call you. I got your phone number off of Facebook. I hope it's okay." And I'm like, "Yeah, sure. What's going on?" He said, "Man, I've been addicted to pain pills for 18 years." He said, "And I listened to your podcast 4 days ago." And he goes, "I've been sober for 4 days."
No
He said,
way.
I had to call and tell you that your story has given me hope and strength, and I don't want to live that way anymore." He's like, "I've lost many jobs. I've been married a couple times. Some of my kids don't speak to me." He's like, after listening to what you said, I just had to tell you personally, thank you, and I love you." And he hangs up the phone. And I sit in my truck for like 10 minutes and I'm crying. I'm like, "Holy shit. My story actually impacted somebody. Not only did it impact somebody, but I happen to know the person. How cool
Right.
was that?" And I talk to him every 2 to 3 weeks. He's coming up on almost 10 months sober now.
Cool.
And it
Amazing.
all stemmed from that one first podcast. So after I got that phone call, I was like, how many more people can I affect just by sharing my story?
Hmm.
So that's when I just started on this podcast journey. Today, sitting with you, this is my 63rd podcast
Wow.
in a year. I actually, as soon as we hang up at 11:30, I got to jump on another one, and that one's from Germany. So
Cool.
it's been from all over the world, and I've been getting so much feedback from so many different people. I get random messages telling me that my story has been inspirational, and I'm not saying that with an ego. I'm saying that humbly because how could somebody like me, who was such a piece of shit, such a hopeless and helpless person, be given this gift of sobriety and recovery and this ability to share my story, to reach out and help others? I truly believe now that the 27 years of my mental illness and addiction didn't happen to me, it happened for me. It
Yeah.
happened for me to become the man I am today, to have the ability to share my story in hopes that it could reach people who are out there suffering with mental illness and addiction so that they know that they're not alone, that there's help out there, and that at the end of the day, we can all truly live and become the person that we were always meant to be. And even if I help one more person, that's one less person that we could lose to this disease of mental illness and addiction. So I'm grateful for what I went through. I'm grateful to give them this opportunity to share my story with you and your audience and with so many other people, and the opportunities that I've been given in sobriety to be flown out to different states and speak to men of and women of first responding people and military and give them hope and courage and
Yeah.
strength that they're not alone, that there's so many more of us know exactly what they're going through, and we're all here to help. And there's no amount of money that can be put on the feeling knowing that you've given somebody hope and encouragement. It's amazing, and I'm truly blessed to be alive. I'm truly grateful to wake up every morning and have a brand new day sober with clarity and know who I finally am in life when I was so lost for so many years
Yeah.
and I didn't even know if I was going to wake up the next day. So I'm grateful and thankful and blessed to be alive and have the opportunity to share my story with you and so many others. It's just an amazing journey I've been on.
Yeah, man. And honestly, you do it so well. I mean, this is the reason I connected with you is I heard you on a couple of podcasts that I had been a guest on as well. Courage to Change with Ashley and the Off the Rails guys. You know, and I listened to your story and it did exactly that. You know, I saw so many parallels and I related to so many pieces of it, and it gave me a lot of hope. And you know, and I'm grateful to be able to sit down with you and you know, share this story with you and you know, be a part of your journey. And you know, and now, you know, we can connect and stay connected, which is the beauty of recovery and, you know, the power of social media when it's used for the right thing. So I mean,
Absolutely.
yeah, man. So I don't want to keep you much longer because you're off to your 64th
Yeah.
podcast. But just real quick before you go, where can people find you? And you know, if there's any questions related to stuff you shared about, or you know, I know that you're a pretty open book and you respond to everybody who reaches out. So just maybe drop your handle, your IG handle, and wherever else anybody else can meet you.
Absolutely. Yeah. My main page is on Instagram and it's at T Lodgen, Lodgen. And like you said, it's completely open. I answer any messages that are sent to me. I try to help as many people as possible. And if I can't help, I try to shoot them in the direction of somebody that can. Um, I'm part of a 5013C nonprofit called Rockstar Testimony, and I'm now running a Zoom meeting every Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern Time for men's mental health and addiction awareness. And I will shoot you that link over so you can put it in
For
the
sure.
bio. Hopefully, we can just continue this journey and keep reaching people and helping people as much as we can. And thank you for allowing me to come on to your show and share my story with your audience. I'm truly humbled and I appreciate meeting you, and I appreciate you having me on. It's such a pleasure to be able to share my story with so many people. And it's dude, this stuff blows me away that my life has turned around so much
Hmm.
in a year and a half. How much more is to come? And I'm just open arms, and I'm waiting for it all to come so I can help as many people as possible.
For sure, man. Well, I'm truly grateful for you, for your story, and for your openness, honesty, and true vulnerability, man. I mean, I really appreciate it, and I want to thank you for just being who you are today. And I wish you many more days of sobriety, recovery, and growth. So, thanks, Tim.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it, and you as well, man. Congratulations, and I'm proud of you as well, brother.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you.